kind of promotion and things like that, then we're very interested in that, you know, idea in terms of promoting the game as well.
Okay,
Um,
that sounds great.
okay, awesome. Um, so I'll share. So at first, I wanted to just just learn more about your background and what you do. Um, so
Okay.
are you graduated from medical school?
Yeah, I just graduated about a month ago
Oh
from
wow,
med school.
yeah.
Very good.
How does it feel?
Oh, it's a great feeling, honestly, but it's very scary as well.
Right, yeah. So are you intending to practice medicine in Sudan?
I am intending on practicing for a bit, but I'm hoping on leaving abroad soon.
Recording stopped.
I
Um,
haven't decided yet which country I want to go to yet, but
so what are your, like, if you had,
hopefully.
I guess this is a tough question, but like if you had to choose like maybe top two, top three countries that you were hoping maybe, you know, to live and work in. Um,
Well, I'm currently in a conflict between the US and the UK as
yeah,
my two main number one and two options. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, US, yeah. I've heard a lot about both because part of my training's in Australia, and so the Commonwealth countries and how they
Oh,
prepare. Yeah, because the Commonwealth system relies more heavily upon clinical diagnosis and like physical exam findings, and then like in the U.S. they use a lot
yeah, it does.
more labs. Yeah. Um, do you know what kind of specialty you're thinking about?
I am still also not 100% sure. I'm conflicted also between internal medicine and obstetrics.
Oh
Haven't
wow.
decided yet though either.
Yeah, yeah. I liked OB a lot actually. I thought, yeah, it's kind of a cool specialty, and
It's very fun, but I care about the lifestyle though.
it's very what?
The lifestyle of it, like the amount of
Yeah.
work hours and such, is a bit too much for me. I think.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
still considering.
Overnights get old quick, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then surgery is kind of like jumping in and out of surgery in OB is kind of an interesting way to go about your day. Um, so yeah, so
I'm planning on both first before I leave and decide.
oh right. So how does it work? Like, what is the average age of people who graduate medical school in Sudan?
It's not that old. It depends on it's ranging from 22 to 26 approximately. Um, Mostly, for in Sudan, you go to medical school straight after high school, so there aren't really any limitations on when you can enroll into it. I went into med school at about 17, and then
Right.
the university itself takes from 5 to 7 years, depending on the location, on the system, and so on. I intentionally chose the one which was a bit short, so I went for a 5 year program.
Wow.
So I graduated at 22. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I know a lot of Americans will start around 22 because they have to
Yeah.
do an undergraduate. I'm not sure if you do you do an undergraduate? Is it required to do an undergraduate in Sudan?
No, not at all. You can start directly from high school. So
Right.
that's why it's a bit quicker.
So that's more similar to UK. Um,
Yeah, it is.
so I
And the
know.
system is very similar here as well,
Oh right.
even
Okay.
the education.
Do you practice medicine in Sudan? Does everybody practice medicine in English?
No, it's a combination of English and Arabic,
Ah. Okay.
especially the clinical subject. Majority of the people in the country don't speak good English, so you have to speak in
Right.
Arabic.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I've not been to Sudan, so excuse my my kind of like basic question. But that's interesting. Yeah, because
Oh
um,
no, it's
yeah, because I think maybe a lot of people would be interested. You know, if they're in Africa already, or if they are adjacent continent that, you know, potentially if they speak English, they could just up and move to Sudan and try to practice medicine, but it probably wouldn't work out that way.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah.
Even with Arabic or more than one different Arabic dialect spoken in the country. So even for me, if I go to some areas that are a bit far from where I live, it would be a bit difficult for me to communicate to patients. So
Right.
it's a very big country.
Right. Right. And are there differences in terms of the way that they practice medicine for the fact that it may be you know, maybe religious or cultural differences to do?
There are
Yeah.
religious and cultural differences, but mainly the issue with medicine here is more about facilities and
Yeah.
financials and so on. When you work in places that are far away from the center of the country, you end up learning a lot on how to depend mostly on clinical science because most patients can't afford any investigations. Like imaging and any other invasive investigations are pretty much out of the table when it comes to our patients.
Wow.
So we always try our best to, like, you get to learn how to function with limited resources. I think that's something that you don't get to see outside, like in the West and so on.
Right.
So that's why I chose to stay here to learn a bit on how to function with not that much.
You see,
So
like,
that when I travel, I can at least.
wow. So are there endemic kind of pathologies that exist there that might be unusual for someone who learned, you know, medicine in the States? So do you have like
definitely. There's tropical
you have what?
pathologies, like tropical diseases, like malaria, schistosomiasis, a lot of other ones.
I was going to say schistosomiasis was one that I thought that people get. And so do people get squamous cell carcinoma of the bladder?
Yeah, it is. Yes, very common.
Oh, wow.
And it's in a specific area in our country, but yeah, it's very common. And malaria is extremely common to the point where like you wouldn't expect to work a week without seeing 2 or 3 patients.
Wow. Yeah, because I've never seen a schistosomiasis patient at all. And yeah, so it's very interesting to. It's I think it's funny when you run into a pathology you've never seen before. It's like meeting a celebrity because you've heard so much about them, and then you finally see it, and you're like, oh, this does exist. Yeah, these things happen. But
it does.
yeah.
A lot of tuberculosis.
Oh, tuberculosis as well.
In all, like all from meningitis to Pott's disease of the spine, any kind of tuberculosis you can. In tuberculosis, I've actually come across that. It's very interesting.
And so, in surgery, do you see on like the anterior chest wall and mediastinum and stuff? Do you see like signs of tuberculosis surgically as well, or do you? Is it mostly like people come in coughing or pericarditis or?
I've only seen it during like a medicine rotation, so I've not seen anything surgical.
Oh, okay. I know only I know hunters here who have like you know, they'll like actually cut a deer open and see signs of tuberculosis or something like that, but not humans.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So you actually see people who are kind of far along with TB and that's one of the things you learn to treat pretty quickly in Sudan.
Yes, definitely. And it's very, like, I think one of the problems with developed countries is that you only see the disease in their first stages, so you don't get to see the disease when they progress. Here we do see them in all stages because sometimes it's very difficult for a patient to get access to healthcare in the first 2 stages. So by the time they come to us, you would see them in all forms and all shapes. It's very interesting.
Wow, yeah. Well, I just wanted to ask you some questions, and it was interesting enough that I just kind of lingered and asked you more questions because I know so little about Sudan and how the medical system is. So I'll ask you one more just because I'm curious. I hope you don't mind. But do you
That's okay, go ahead.
do you immediately after medical school can you potentially work at the fullest extent of your license, or are you required to continue your education in a way that is going to certify you to work as opposed to enabling you to hone your craft and be a good doctor? Like, would it be possible for you to just hang up your shingle and be a doctor in Sudan?
No, you're required to do an intern year, and then after the intern year, there's a licensing exam you take.
Okay.
Then after that exam, you're practically a doctor. Yeah.
Oh wow. All right. So you might say like maybe 6 or 5 years, depending on your situation, for med school, and then 1 year of intern year, and you could potentially start making money and being a doctor.
Yes. However, it's actually not, the pay is not that great.
Right.
There's barely anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons that I think people come to the States is the pay for doctors in Australia and in UK. I think early in your career is not as compensatory after what is the equivalent residency. However, the residency is not very well paid either. So, and I think it's brutal to do the
Yeah.
USMLE exam, but I can't speak to how hard it is to get licensed in terms of examinations in other places, but the USMLE exam is pretty intense. But so I'll show you this. We are a kind of a medical education game, which prepares people for their medical licensing exams. And so our website is not up yet. It's going to be up this week. And are you able to see my screen
Okay.
at all?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. So effectively, we are a like rapid fire. I would say that this is, for all its bells and whistles, this is effectively like a Q bank. Do you guys use that terminology?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like it was very important to me when I was designing the game to produce a game that has like rapid fire vignette style questions, meaning like patient presentation, diagnosis, and treatment kind of things inbuilt into the questions that are kind of told as a story and then given as a multiple choice question. And then and so those questions kind of simulate the licensing exam prep that you would do in the States, simulate the actual experience of taking the exam itself, as opposed to like flashcards and information packaging that you could do, like note taking or anything like that. This is like a actual this would not be your primary resource. This would be a thing that after you had studied 5 hours, that would lower the threshold to continue studying and doing questions. So you wind up with, maybe, 70 or 80 questions that day, or maybe 120 questions that day instead of, stopping when you're done. And then we also have a review game, which allows you to lower the threshold to review, which I think is the most arduous part of medical school, is reviewing the questions you get wrong and kind of and reviewing things you've already learned, because it's more fun to just delve into new information as opposed to reviewing. And so I'm going to jump from the website actually, because we are currently so just to prime you for what it will be. This is going to be very much a multiplayer game, and so people can actually fight each other, or they can play it as an RPG kind of roguelike strategy game. And so incorporating questions. So it's very bizarre, but I think we've done it kind of tastefully, found a way to incorporate medical style questions into a kind of gaming format and socialization format, because the idea is to like create all of these things that casinos in Vegas do to addict people to video games. I didn't, I would love for someone to say that they meant to play the game for 1 hour, but they wound up playing it all day, and their wife wants them to stop studying because now that they play my game, they study 3 times more, and it's getting in the way of their chores and things that they should be doing.
Really nice.
I basically want somebody to lose themselves in the game and really enjoy the process of learning it. And I also want them to be social in their experience of studying, because I think part of learning is getting ensconced in kind of medical culture. And so, with pandemics and things like that, with lockdowns, I think it's so nice to have something that connects people during such a kind of an insular process of studying. I know there's a lot of study socialization apps that I'm a huge fan of and I really like the idea of, but I've never seen a place where people can literally study together while self-studying that feels like they're doing the same thing. Um, like feels like they're actually engaging with the same um, environment, and they can take a break at the same time, and it kind of makes sense for them to do so without just studying the same material. So this is the menu screen. So there's kind of a game review section, continue, new game, and then if you start a new game, it kind of asks you what kind of character you want to play. So you're welcome to choose if you want.
Oh, this is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to complete like quantum leap from what we have currently, because I feel like what we have currently is a model where I think people with learning disabilities and people with kind of attention deficit disorder especially are rife in medicine. There are really a lot of people who experience dysgraphia and reading speed, encumbrances, that things like this really make it more tolerable and less demoralizing to sit there and study all day. And so
Yeah, definitely.
I want it to be, I want it to be, um, I want there to be a positive emotional valence to starting a study session, which changes the game fundamentally for some students, because I think a lot of students, the most arduous task, it's just like going to the gym. The hardest part is getting to the gym.
Yeah.
It's not working out. It's taking time out of your day to get there. And so that's kind of how I feel about medicine and learning on occasion, when you're really stressed and somebody's kind of, you'd like to read a book and, read The Lord of the Rings or something, but if somebody assigns it in a classroom, sometimes it feels like it's being forced upon you and therefore isn't as enjoyable to read it. And so, so I'll choose a character here. So these are custom art and things that we're adding to the game, and so this is an archer. So I'm going to choose level 2, which actually signifies like the step 2, which is a whole licensing exam. And so here we have in the bottom right, we actually have a chat, which will tell you things about your environment. So if you're like a smart character, you might say, you might click on something. Like when I click on something, this is my like sensorium that tells me like what I'm seeing and thinking about, and what my character's kind of experiencing in the game visually. And then here it will kind of tell you, if you smell an ogre, that it's kind of a smelly character, so you might actually smell an ogre if your senses are strong enough, or you might hear them approaching, and this will kind of tell you what you're actually hearing, as opposed to just hearing a sound in the game. It'll actually tell you what you're thinking about that sound and what you know about that sound when you're more wise or more intelligent, or more, your senses are heightened or whatever. And so there's a lot of things that have to do with information sharing between players, so that it's more social and you feel like you're engaging with someone else. I'll feel like we've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish when somebody like meets their wife on my game, or they they have like their best friend from college with someone on my video game. That would be amazing. So the way that it works is you have this coordinate grid that changes as you move in and out of frame. So if I were to move to G2, then I would be moving, this side of the screen would read, B1 through 5 instead of A1 through 5. And
Okay.
if I click on this tile, it tells me that this is a flat, grassy plain. And so if I want to move, I have to spend action points, which are kind of like my economy of, you can think of them as slices of time. And so in order to win slices of time in the game, you have to answer USMLE style medical questions currently. It eventually will have things like medical questions that are more broad and can prepare you for other licensing exams. Like if you're in Sudan and you have a licensing exam specific to Sudan, then potentially we could add 1,000 questions for your licensing exam. You could play alongside someone who is preparing for the licensing exam in the States. And so that's another nice thing, is you get to mix different, disciplines, as well as, national, preparatory systems, and kind of get them working together on a video game, which would be nice. And so if I want to move, then I can press the S key, which is signified by this button, and I can move one square, and it kind of reveals things on the map. So if I click here, it tells me what enemy vaguely I see on the mini map is a spider. And currently we're using words that are described by the developers, who are not, they're not using kind of the way that I'm going to describe the units eventually. But so early on you run into things like spiders, later on you run into goblins and centaurs and ogres and dragons and hydras and all sorts of very fantasy oriented things. You also have spells that you can upgrade and use. And so if I wanted to use a spell, I would assign it using numbers here, 1 and 2. And then I have a third spell here, I'm not sure. I think that's just a status for, it's careful aim. And so then I click on this, and you can see here when I use a spell, like I'm going to try to kick. So I just kicked the spider further away so that I could use my, my archery attack, which needs to be ranged, to attack him. And then if I click on the spider and I attack it, then it actually makes an animation and attacks. Usually it'll make a sound for the arrow that is shooting them. Now I'm going through this all kind of a granular way to explain what's happening in real time, because these things take time to put in, and the fact that they're functional and ready kind of speaks to the fact that we are very serious, and we're going to make the game very to our liking, and we're not limited. We don't have a runway that's kind of short, and we're developing the game to be very high quality for students to really enjoy themselves when they're playing. And so one of the aspects is also that because you have to click on a tile to see what that tile contains, you can imagine a scenario where a player who's standing right next to you is supposed to see the spider, but they might not have clicked that tile. So you might still want to tell them, I'm going to cheat and give myself action points so that I can type into the chat log, there is a spider on tile D2. So if I write that into the chat, which currently when you type you elicit hotkeys, which I need to fix. So if I were to say that, then it would say it here, but it would also say it in the chat log. And if it says it in the chat log, then another player might be able to see that and avoid that tile if they're a certain character that gets, badly affected by spider poison or whatever the case may be. So, so I'll show you what a question looks like if you want. There's also night and day, and there's thirst and hunger, and there are items that you can choose, and there's also character. Kind of stats, which are we need to kind of implement it displaying the stats, although the stats have been implemented already. And when you add equipment, you become more powerful and more capable of survival. And then I'm going to show you a question here. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll stop and.
No, it's going great so far. It's very
interesting. Cool. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you. So I'm trying to elicit a question. I think maybe potentially we're running into a first bug here, but usually I actually play like for an hour and a half with students, and we don't run into bugs. I've had like maybe something like 10 sessions with students that last maybe 90 minutes, and I think we've run into I don't think we've run into any bugs actually. So in terms of the things that we usually do. So I'm going to answer a question, and it looks like it's not letting me do so. So I'm going to try cutting out. I don't know what this bug is made of because I've not seen it before. So I'm going to refresh, and maybe that will fix it. Let's see. So, oh, I think I know what the problem was. That wasn't a bug. I have separated my games into different licensing exams. So this must be step 1, and I played step 2. So I'm going to change the music setting. Okay, so it didn't have any questions for us because it's the wrong exam. So I'm going to be, instead of a archer, I've already shown that, I'm going to be an assassin here. Okay. So here I am. I'm going to skill up some skills. And I'll attack him once by skilling first. Okay. These icons will change. They're very... so this is a very different character, by the way. This character can attack diagonal. They can move diagonal because they're more agile. And so they have different characteristics that are like really fundamentally different in the mechanics of this character. You have to accommodate with the entire game. You have to design it knowing that this character exists. So it takes a lot of thinking to do that. So here we have a vignette style question. This is a step 1 exam question. So you have a 36-year-old African-American man concerned about his mood, history of depression, concerned casually remarked today that he would be better off dead. So he has suicidal ideation, disheveled, flat affect, significant mild hypertension, diabetes, takes lisinopril and metformin. Following aspects of risk factors, suicidal completion. So I don't think his race would matter, and his age probably isn't a factor given that he's 36 and not a teenager. And so if he takes prescription drugs, that would enable him to actually kill himself with the drugs themselves. And so marital status may be a predisposing factor, but I'm pretty sure it's C. I'm not sure. Okay, so it's actually sex. All right, so if you're a man, you're more likely to complete suicide. Maybe that's what they were talking about. Complete? Yeah, okay. Completion as opposed to just... So they're talking about suicide completion as opposed to suicide itself, the attempt. So that's how they work. So like, it remembered what I highlighted when I did the question. It remembered how long it took me to answer it, how confident I was in my answer, and then whether it was correct. So because I was high confidence and I was inaccurate, I actually do damage to my own character when I do that, as if I like swung a sword and it accidentally hit my own wrist or something. Then I did damage to myself. And so the speed at which you answer also dictates how much action points you get, and so how much time you win within the game, quote unquote, to do something that you want to do. And so I can now go to the explanation and start reading about how this was about completion of suicide, not just suicide attempts. And so men are, a certain percentage more likely to experience, have mortality risks that are higher than female suicide attempts. And so that is something that if I were to go into my game review logs, I could access that information and like review this content as if it were a QBank, and I was just looking at what I had highlighted when I was looking at the explanation, and it will remember what I highlight in the review section and everything like that. And so you have this like ongoing library of things that are categorized by the game that you were playing when you experienced that question. And so you're kind of creating a treasure trove of like questions that you either got right or got wrong. And but had I gotten this question right, I would be awarded kind of these green points that I can use to move around in the game and attack. And so as you move around, time passes, and there is night and day and weather and all sorts of things that have been implemented. And so that's how it works. And so when people can play together, they will eventually, all of the players will die. And when you die, you observe other players, or you review the questions you got wrong and things like that. And you can be revived or potentially summoned as another type of character or another type of creature that's a little bit weaker, or be spoken to, and you can have information sharing between living and dead characters. But when all of the characters die, you have a game over, and it looks like this. And it kind of tells you how many right answers, how many wrong answers, how many monsters you killed, how many stages you completed. And then if you go back to menu after the game, you can go to game review. And this is kind of the afterlife art that we have for the currently for the game. And there will be kind of, this is an early stage of it, but I'll just show you kind of, there's like, let's see if we can get one going. Yeah, I don't think we have any summary review stuff, things for the, but eventually there'll be a game where, oh, there's vitamin K. Okay, so maybe there is. Okay. Maybe not. Okay, so you can, this is the developer testing it, but ordinarily this would say something like, foosh, which is a falling on an outstretched hand injury, and then you'd have like a scaphoid fracture here. And so the treatment would be, an X-ray, and potentially you wouldn't see a fracture on X-ray for at least a week or 2 weeks, and so you might empirically decide to cast it or do whatever you would do. And so these are boxes that we've set up to be occluded, and then there would be answer choices here that you would choose quickly in a multiplayer fashion, competing with other players to answer quickly and to earn points that go on your profile and can be displayed as evidence that you've been studying a lot, so you can choose study partners and find people to study with. And so when you go to the game log, this is the game we just played. We got a psychiatry question. It remembers your highlights. It remembers the question that you answered. And you can flag it for later if you really want to see that question again, and review it and understand it. And I can still highlight it and make sense of it. So that is the game in a nutshell. That's about as far as we took the functionality of the studying and things like that. But I think the gameplay is going to be really interesting, because there's going to be kind of crafting of items, and there's going to be very wildly different characters in terms of what happens when they die, and telepathy and things like that, communicating with other players. And then there's going to be a map editor where people can create their own campaigns for other people to play. So it's going to be like Minecraft in the sense that you can create your own world, and then people can interact with that world. If they're studying for our licensing exam for law school, for example, is called the LSAT. We would have people who are lawyers playing alongside medical students, playing alongside people who are preparing to be engineers. And so we'll be kind of connecting those specialties, and kind of, for the first time, those people are going to have a really solid, energetically favorable reason to study with one another and communicate with one another in a professional context. So that's going to be kind of cool.
It does sound very cool. I do have a question though.
Yeah.
Is it possible to select which chapters you want to have the questions be in, or is it just general?
Yeah, so that's something that we have not implemented yet, but we will certainly allow people to review topics that are specific to cardiology or pulmonary or renal. And the only caveat to that is one of the things that another thing to mention is if you get a question wrong, or if you take too long to answer a question, or your confidence was low on a question, you're going to see that question again. And so if you run out of pulmonary questions, we have like 9,000 questions, so you're going to take a long time to run out of pulmonary questions. But if you do, then you'll be fed other questions. And you might only start seeing pulmonary questions that you got wrong or took too long on again because you ran out of pulmonary questions. So that's the only time that the game will begin giving you questions that you did not select, because that's by necessity. If you're playing the game and you run out of questions, you're really not doing any service to the people you're playing with, because you can't earn action points. And so throughout the course of that one game, you'll be, receiving questions, as a default from other areas. So we're figuring out, when I finish pulmonary, I don't want to eat into my OB-GYN questions, or I don't want to eat into my cardiology questions. So can I prefer to have a second line category of questions, like at first it'll be renal, and if I run out, it will be musculoskeletal. And so we're working on how to make the categories that you choose enforceable, so that players aren't accidentally using questions that they don't want to answer yet, if they're not prepared to answer them yet. Because you don't want to receive immunology questions if you don't know anything about immunology yet.
Definitely not.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good question. Yeah. So what other, like, is there anything, like, I guess part of the reason I wanted to show you and influencers and people who have just graduated medicine, or people who, medical school, or people who are going into practice themselves, is like, what could we do to bring, like, if you're not a gamer, or if you are a gamer, I'm not sure, but like, what more could we do, or what things do you think are most exciting about it, or least exciting about it, or things, encumbrances, things like that you like? What are your impressions of what might motivate you to play something like this, or to or what your friends would use to decide that they would play a game like that?
Okay, I'm not a gamer at all. I have very little
Yeah,
experience when it comes to games and such.
totally.
But I think it's very interesting. I like the way that there's different things you can do. There's so many different combinations that you can try out, different characters that you can use. I think that
Yeah.
would be very interesting. So it would make people more curious on to try it. But I think for people who aren't that into the whole gaming thing, it might be a little difficult in the beginning to start,
Right.
or like to get used to how it works and
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what if there's like, or when it comes to the game itself, when you enter the game, you enter randomly with other people, or could you like create a room with other people who are your friends?
So that's a great question. So we are days away from releasing our first beta version of multiplayer. So what you've just seen is actually limited to single player. But when our multiplayer comes out, you'll be able to create your own private game. It will be maxed out at 4 players who are actively playing, and then you will also allow privately you'll be able to invite people to observe your game. I'm not sure what the limit is on the observers. We're kind of talking to back-end people about how much data we can have going on in one room, but and still keep the speeds up for people in like Malaysia and places where they're connecting to a server, and still getting game experience that allows them to interact with the other players in a way that is practical. But to answer your question, it's like 4 people can decide to play with each other every time specifically. So you'll be able to add friends from your account. You'll be able to chat with people, private message with people on the site, on the game, without leaving the game. And so you don't have to give them your private information, or you can block somebody and you'll never see them in a chat. And then there's a whole social media kind of aspect to this, and you can arrange to only study with people you like studying with. And then there's also the idea that you can use a kind of a random match system. I say random tongue-in-cheek because it's really choosing on the basis of parameters that you're going to have. You're going to be able to preference people who are studying for the same licensing exam that you're studying for. You can preference women or men. You can preference if you want to study with people who are from your country, or people who are not even studying in your discipline or only studying renal questions. And so when we have a larger universe of people who are joining to play the game, we're going to open those preferences up. But at first, you're going to be able to play with people who have really experienced more questions and have been playing the game longer or shorter, so their gameplay is going to be more advanced, and your gameplay is going to be more advanced if you've been playing longer. And so we match people on the basis of that at first. And so we haven't started marketing. We're kind of in ninja mode, but yeah. So randomly you can wind up meeting people and saying, oh, well, we really study well together. Why don't I add you as a friend, and we'll play, next week on Thursday or something. And so that's one of the things I'm really excited about, is people from all over the world kind of finding study partners in other parts of medicine, and learning more about their systems, educational systems, and then fighting for the things that they like in terms of medical education in their own home country.
Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
definitely love that.
Oh,
I think
cool.
another thing that could work as well is, like, for example, I usually go on study rooms with some of my followers every once in a
Yeah.
while to study with them. So that would be also amazing, like to give them an opportunity to study with me when they
Yeah.
want to and stuff like that.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, that's our favorite idea, is that people try to study with their followers or with their friends, and I'm so excited to do that. I've been playing single player with rooms full of like students and doctors who are trying to learn the licensing exam here in the States, and just doing that is so interactive, and so like they are participating in a way that usually doesn't happen, where they're talking about where I should move and what I should attack and which abilities I should skill up, and it takes them out of what they're doing a little bit between each question, to the extent that they're kind of like we study for like 2 or 3 hours at a time. And I can't
That's
wait.
amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to actually be in the game and participating. So, yeah, okay. So you probably would. You think it's possible that someone would potentially try it out, but you're not so sure, if you're not a gamer, that you might play for hours, every week, or make it a thing that you do regularly. It kind of seems like something maybe you would play.
Actually, I think if a person gets
Yeah.
used to it, it would be much. Sorry, my internet's not that great right now.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was gonna say I cut out a little bit.
Can you please repeat what you were saying last?
Oh, I missed what you said. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my internet starts to get bad at this time. But basically, what I was saying is that maybe for people who aren't gamers, the motivator wouldn't be the game itself, but it would be the community. So I still think it would work
Yeah.
out.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, I think time will tell. Also, the game review. I think the reviewing game might be something that people they don't even play the RPG. They just wind up playing the review game and meeting people that way.
Yep. I think I would be more into that as well.
Yeah, people say that a lot. Actually, they like the idea of socializing, multiplayerizing, just questions, just constantly doing questions and competing with people that way is it's I think it's shocking that there isn't something online that you can go to and just answer questions like a trivia game, that's
Yeah.
multiplayer. But it doesn't exist yet, shockingly. So thank you so much for your time, and if you have more questions or anything to talk about, we can totally go into that. But if you have anything,
I would love to try it out once it's out.
oh great. Well, I'll reach out to you and see. I think we might make a kind of like opening day kind of display of the game and what it's like. If you'd like to be one of the players that joins into the game itself and plays, or live streams even potentially if we're far enough and you would be interested in doing that. We would be trying to get players who are live streaming the game concurrent with what I'm doing so that we can see from multiple perspectives what the other players are thinking and experiencing concurrent with my experience of the game. So that,
Okay, that would be
yeah.
great. Definitely
Oh,
be
cool,
interested in
cool.
that. Okay.
All right. Well, that would be great. So, so it's very nice to meet you. And maybe when we're further along, we can meet again and post a video then as well.
Okay.
Um, so, so I wanted to ask because I think Rowena spoke to you, but I didn't actually get your take. I have a recording now of this conversation, but would you be comfortable if I were to post post the conversation to? I have a YouTube channel and I have like something like 12 views every time I post a video, so I have like almost
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, all right. All right. Well, I won't keep you too much longer, but sounds good. That's great.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really
Yeah.
love this.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's lovely. All right. Thank you. And maybe we'll talk again. So,
Okay.
all right. See ya. I'll reach out to you soon when we're getting a little further along.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.